I'm Christopher Assaro, president of Holt Construction. I'm proud to announce that the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, in partnership with American Airlines, URW Airports, has announced a $125 million commercial redevelopment of JFK's Terminal 8. As the project's construction partner, Holt Construction is pleased to partner with URW to introduce our new information and technical assistance program designed to connect you to opportunities available across the 24-month redevelopment of Terminal 8, all part of the Port Authority's $19 billion airport redevelopment program that is transforming New York's airport system. Working with our partners at the Port Authority, American Airlines, URW, and Phoenix Infrastructure, we have designed a special series of programs that will help you learn more about the project, the business and contracting opportunities that are right for your company, and how your business can participate. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to partnering together.
Good afternoon, everyone. On today's session, we will be discussing working on the airport construction project and how these projects involve several safety considerations due to the complexity of the environment and the potential risks associated with construction activities. This session will cover many aspects of working safely while in an airport, whether you're working airside or landside, including construction site safety, emergency preparedness, and environmental and health concerns. Remember that each airport and construction project may have its own unique circumstances and safety requirements. It's crucial to engage with the relevant stakeholders, including airport authorities, regulatory agencies, construction management teams, and safety experts, to ensure that all necessary safety precautions are taken throughout the project. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with the safety officers with Holt Construction, and we have us today, Peter Lee.
Peter Lee, safety officer for Newark Airport.
And Sandy.
Sandy Velasquez, New York City Airports.
So let's start off with a couple of items regarding general safety. Sandy, what are the specific safety guidelines and regulations for construction projects within an airport environment?
Each airport has their specific safety guidelines that we abide by. Newark, LaGuardia, and JFK falls on the Port Authority. Therefore, we follow the regulations along with the federal OSHA regulations, state and local jurisdictions. Security is a major factor when entering and working with the airports. Workers must always be escorted by security if they do not have a SWAC clearance or a SITA badge. Permits such as hot work and crane picks need to be submitted to the Port Authority to have authorized to perform such a task. Tool logs are necessary to account for all tools being brought into the airport. We're limited to some of the work we can conduct based on many contribution factors such as flights, airport staff, passengers, noise level, etc.
Are there any safety orientations or training programs required for all personnel working on airport projects?
Whole site safety orientations are conducted when first arriving on site. OSHA 30 and OSHA 10 hours are needed for all workers in Newark. When it comes to LaGuardia and JFK, we follow Department of Buildings rules, which is the New York City rules, and we're required to have all workers on site to perform any work, to have the SST 40 hour for any worker. And if you're the competent person on site overseeing these workers, you need the SST 62-hour supervisor.
And what personal protective equipment, or PPE as we call it, is mandatory for workers, and how is it provided and enforced, Sandy?
All PPE is provided by their employer. Here we have safety officers or our site super. Also, the competent person is to enforce that we follow all the rules and protect the workers with PPE, such as hard hats, high vests, gloves, eye protection, face shield if necessary, boots, and 95 dust masks if necessary. And if a worker is working on a height more than 6 feet, they need to have a full protection harness, retractable harnesses. And if they're working around noise, they need to have hearing protection.
Also, is there a designated safety officer or safety team responsible for overseeing the safety practices on the construction site?
All Holt jobs have our supers overseeing safety. Also, the competent person of each subcontractor is responsible for overseeing the safety of their workers. However, if required by the client, we will need a full-time safety person on site who will conduct walkthroughs and make sure that we follow all the safety regulations that is placed on their health and safety plan that Holt has in place and also that the subcontractor has in place.
Thank you, Sandy. Peter, how are potential hazards identified, assessed, and mitigated during different phases of the construction project?
During different construction phases, potential hazards are identified through risk assessment and daily site inspections. They are then assessed for severity, and mitigation strategies are employed, such as elimination, engineering controls, administrative controls, and PPE. Ongoing maintenance and inspections continue after construction is completed to ensure ongoing safety. We offer a culture of learning and hold safety stand-downs on a frequent basis.
So let's kind of delve into the more site-specific safety. Peter, what measures are in place to prevent unauthorized access to construction areas by airport employees, passengers, or any other non-construction personnel?
To prevent airport employees, curious passengers, and other non-construction personnel from entering our sites, we implement controlled access zones around our sites, barricades with security locks, and the use of airport badging. We may at times hire a security guard for some projects to have security on premise 24/7.
And how are construction vehicles and equipment separated from pedestrians and traffic within the airport premises?
All vehicles that are authorized to enter airside have Port Authority issued license plates attached to their front and rear bumpers. All other vehicles and equipment arriving on site must have visible company signage on the side of the vehicles and will be escorted either by security or our vehicles after inspection at the security gates.
Peter, are there specific protocols for managing noise, dust, and other potential nuisances to kind of minimize their impact on airport operations and the neighboring areas?
Yes. To minimize the impact of noise, dust, and other nuisances during airport construction, protocols typically include using noise barriers, controlling dust with HEPA vacuums, water, suppressants, monitoring the air quality, managing traffic, conducting work at off-peak hours, following environmental regulations, and using any other administrative controls.
And how are construction materials, debris, and waste managed to prevent them from becoming a safety hazard or obstructing airport activities?
Managing construction material, debris, and waste involves designated storage areas away from the active operations, establishing regular scheduled removals, using barriers and signage for hazard warnings, conducting material inspections, implementing proper waste management for compliance with environmental regulations. Regular housekeeping and safety training for workers are essential for a clean site.
And Peter, what procedures are in place for excavation and trenching, and how are workers protected from cave-ins and other excavation-related risks?
Excavation and trenching prioritizes workers through rigorous measures. This includes site assessment, safety training, and daily inspections. Protective systems like sloping, benching, shoring, and trench boxes are employed based on the soil condition and the size of the trench. Safe entry and exit points are established. Spoils and equipment are kept away from the trench edges at a minimum of 2 feet as per OSHA. Underground utilities are marked and protected, and atmospheric testing is performed prior to entering the trench or excavation. When conditions change, or whenever there's suspicion of a hazardous atmosphere, they're also tested as well. An emergency response plan is put in place, overseen by a competent person, and is to be thoroughly documented and maintained on site.
So Peter mentioned emergency response plan. Sandy, what is the emergency response plan in case of accidents, fires, medical incidents, or any other emergencies on the construction site?
We are required to contact Port Authority immediately for any accidents or incidents that occur on site. Regarding accidents and injuries, our superintendents are first aid, CPR, AED certified. First aid stations will be provided and we will perform first aid care if necessary for minor injuries. In the event that transportation is required for the injured personnel, we will contact the emergency services for transportation, which is a specific number the Port Authority will provide to us. We will implement HAZCOM practice daily for fires and other emergencies that they are clearly marked fire exits and evacuations with 2 egress points clear of material and debris and a muster point for all workers to meet, and they are brief of this muster point and the orientation at the beginning of the project.
And Sandy, how are the exits clearly marked and accessible, and are evacuation drills conducted on a yearly basis?
Emergency exits are marked with signage. Egress paths are clear from debris and materials. Egress routes and exits are discussed during the site safety orientation. And we perform evacuation drills every 6 months on all of our job sites.
Thank you. Are there any fire safety measures such as fire hydrants, extinguishers, and fire resistant materials incorporated into the construction plan, Sandy?
Yes, a sufficient amount of tag and inspected fire extinguishers are supplied through the site and placed usually by the entry or exit points of the site. All hard work that is to be performed is required to have a completed and signed hard work permit authorized by Port Authority's fire marshals prior to start the work. Every trade conducting hard work should have a fire guard present with an inspected and good condition fire extinguisher on hand at all times. In case of a fire, Port Authority must be contacted immediately, and depending on the severity of the situation, all personnel on site must be evacuated until we give in the green light to go back to work.
So we all know communication is very important on the job site. Sandy, what communication systems are in place to alert all workers about changing conditions, emergencies, or any type of safety updates?
Regarding management of change, we will hold regularly safety stand downs to inform workers about any changes that might affect the safety protocols of the site. If the safety update concerns a specific subcontractor, the competent person and or the foreman will be notified about the necessary changes to inform their team to keep everyone involved updated.
Thank you, Sandy. Let's kind of discuss the aircraft operations. Peter, how are construction activities coordinated with airport authorities to ensure that construction doesn't interfere with aircraft takeoffs, landings, or taxiing?
Before conducting any task that may affect aircraft operations, we will call the traffic control tower and inform them of the operation that's going to be taking place, where it's going to be located, and what time we will be completing the work. Once the work is completed, we will call the tower back and inform them that we are finishing up and that we're packing up and getting out of there.
And Sandy, what protocols are in place to prevent foreign object debris from being introduced onto runways, taxiways, and apron areas?
To prevent foreign object debris from entering runways, taxiways, and apron areas at the airport, key protocols include secure perimeter fencing, control ground vehicle movement, construction site management, FOD awareness training, and FOD walks at the beginning and at the end of the ship, and ongoing maintenance practices.
And what precautions are taken to prevent construction activities from interfering with air traffic control, navigation equipment, and communication systems?
To prevent construction activities from interfering with air traffic control, navigation equipment, and communication systems are at the airports. Precautions including obtaining approval from the traffic control towers and Port Authority, establishing safety zones and critical equipment, scheduling construction during off-peak hours, and implementing safety measurements to prevent interference.
So let's discuss some environmental and health concerns. Peter, how are environmental impacts such as air and water quality considered and managed during the construction process?
During the construction process, environmental impacts like air and water quality are managed through various measures. These include environmental impact assessments to identify potential issues, emissions control to reduce air pollution, erosion and stormwater management to prevent water contamination, proper waste and hazardous material disposal, and mitigation efforts to preserve natural habitats. Regular monitoring and compliance with environmental regulations ensure that the construction activities are conducted responsibly.
And what measures are in place to address potential health hazards such as exposure to hazardous materials or airborne pollutants?
To address potential health hazards such as exposure to hazardous materials and airborne pollutants, measures include hazard identification with JHAs, job hazard analysis, SDS sheets for proper handling and storage of material, PPE usage, ventilation systems, exposure monitoring, and emergency response protocols. Worker training, medical surveillance, compliance with safety regulations, workplace inspections, and environmental controls are also a crucial component.
And what safety protocols and measures need to be in place to ensure the well-being of our construction workers and the airport personnel?
To ensure the well-being of construction workers and airport personnel, key safety measures include safety training, PPE, HAZCOM, hazard identification, and emergency response plans, regular safety inspections, and fostering a safety-first culture. Compliance with safety regulations, safe work practices, and effective communication are essential components of these protocols.
Peter and Sandy, thank you so much for this informative session. Let's move on to our audience's live Q&A. I have a couple of questions that we are going to respond to. And the first question is, what are the key safety protocols and procedures airport personnel must follow when working on the tarmac or in other active airport areas? I'm going to defer this one to Peter.
So, I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time? I couldn't hear you.
Yes. It's what are the key safety protocols and procedures airport personnel must follow when working on the tarmac or in other active airport areas?
So the most important thing that anybody that's going to be working on the tarmac or even in the airport in general is we need to have sighted training to understand the hazards and what rules not to break, as in, BORs, pretty much breach of rules, breach of regulations. I'm sorry. So we don't get cited, nobody gets in trouble, and also nobody gets hurt from, and damaged property. As far as that goes, regulations, we have to pretty much follow the lines on the roads. We have to stay within our site, make sure that the debris doesn't get onto the tarmac, and just stay within Port Authority regulations.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, how does the airport ensure the safety of its employees when it comes to the movement of aircraft vehicles and equipment on the airfield?
Every operation that happens on site is coordinated with the tower. So we will communicate with Port Authority, and Port Authority will communicate with the tower, and they will always give us a zone to work and to make sure that we abide what we're supposed to perform the work. And sometimes we will schedule this work. So maybe we will do this work late or after hours or where airport operation is slow. So everything will be coordinated with the tower and with Port Authority before we go to any active session.
Thank you. Next question we have are, what measures are in place to prevent unauthorized access to restricted areas within the airport, and how is security maintained in these areas? So Sandy, can you speak to that one specific to JFK? And then Peter, you can kind of add to it if you'd like.
If we're working not on an airside area, we are gonna have a barricaded fences placed around all the area that we're working. And we also have different security measures. Maybe we have security guards in place, or we have a turnstile, and all the security access is controlled by Port Authority. We will probably follow an agency from Port Authority that will give us an access system for the workers to come to work to JFK. Usually what this includes is all workers to have their SST cards at a SWAT clearance or a cited clearance. And if they don't, these workers will have a temporary access to the site until maybe of 5 or 10 active work days, until their company decides if they're gonna stay on the job site for more than this time period, that you get a temporary badge, and they will have to go through the process of clearance with SWAT, which is almost the same clearance as CIDA. And if they do get this clearance, or they're even in the process of it, they will get a temporary badge until, well, they will get a temporary badge until the clearance is clear, and they will get a permanent badge after that.
Thank you. Peter, how does the airport manage the potential hazards associated with handling hazardous materials or cargo? And what safety precautions are taken in these situations?
So we usually have SDS sheets, and for any chemicals or I guess oxygen tanks, acetylene tanks and stuff like that comes in, we need to have them checked at the gate. Security usually inspects them, and they check for any irregularities or anything that may be a danger to the airport or the airplanes or passengers or to the public. As far as material goes, usually when they're coming in, we have a list, they check it and just make sure that, well, also on top of that with tools as well, it's the same thing. So they check it and they just let it go. And if it's good, they let it go. So.
Okay, next question is, can you describe the emergency response and evacuation procedures that airport workers should be familiar with in the event of an incident or disaster on the airport premises? Sandy, I'm going to refer that one to you.
Okay, so everything starts when a project begins. All the workers have an orientation. On this orientation, you explain to the workers all the rules and regulations that they have to follow, the ways that the workers have to protect themselves, but also we have, in case of an emergency plan, where we have to tell the guys which are at the exits or what's the muster point to meet after an emergency, because we also have to make sure that everybody here that had access to the site, it's out of the site. So whenever workers come on site, we have a signing system and a sign out system, and this will take automatically place whenever we have an evacuation. So in a brief, in the orientation part of the project, we will give them where's the routes in case of an emergency happens. And obviously we have to make sure that these routes for emergency are clear, are clean, and there is no tripping hazards for them in case at any time an emergency happens. So this is a daily check that the safety officers or the supers on site are performing.
Okay. Peter, what safety training and certifications are typically required for employees working in various roles at an active airport, and how often are these certifications renewed or updated?
For Newark Airport, it's a little different from New York standards. We usually typically, for competent persons, they need their OSHA 30. As far as just workers, they have their OSHA 10s and any other specific operations that they're doing. If they're operating cranes or the lifts or anything like that, they should provide their certifications for that through the hall as well. As far as OSHA, let's see, let me think. OSHA training, you got crane operators, you have lull operators, you have all these other guys. As long as they have the training, we can upload it into our Skill Signal app and we can keep track of their certifications. OSHA 30s and OSHA 10s usually they need to be renewed as per Port Authority, as per Holt, every 5 years.
Okay. Peter, what kind of barriers or fences are required for landside, airside, and inside the terminal building?
So for exterior work, landside or airside, we usually have chain link fencing, and we employ Yodox outside just to prevent any vehicles or anybody like outside prying eyes from entering. Interior work, we usually have just temporary barricades with locks, coded locks on there. We have keyed locks. Just the same thing as from the outside, prevent anybody that's the public from, airport personnel or anybody from entering the site that's not authorized.
Also, what are the height restrictions? Sandy, can you kind of describe if there are specific height restrictions? I'm not specific to what, but I think in general.
They're probably asking for full height restrictions. We follow all the OSHA rules when it comes to full. So we're gonna do the 6 foot whenever somebody's working in a ladder or a lift or a scaffolding. The moment they reach 6 feet of height, I'm guessing that's what they're asking for. That's when they need to have some type of fall protection. Depending on the work they're doing, all this, it will be specified in their job hazard analysis, which will be something that they submit in the beginning of the project. So whenever the subcontractor is bidding for a job and they win the job, they need to send us a job hazard analysis with the entire scope of work of what they're doing. And on those details, we will know and we will tell them approve or not approve when they submit their health and safety plan. We will approve or not approve the details of fall protection that they have. So they're not coming on site blind, not knowing what regulations to follow. Usually we're the ones that approve safety plans, job-specific safety plan for the subcontractors for the job that they're working on. So they will be aware, or the competent person that is with the crew on site, they will be aware of what fall protections it requires, or what fall protection their company submitted, and they have to abide by it.
Okay, thank you. We have one last question. It looks like it's specific to if we already attended a safety orientation with AECom Hunt, do we still have to do one with Holt? So I guess whomever you are working with on the client side, Sandy, doesn't matter who it is, we still have to do one, correct?
Yes, we do have to. So every company that you have on site, you might be in the same project, but you might not be working for the same contractor. So you have to, the company that you're working for, you have to do an orientation, particularly with them, because like I said before, when you win a bid and you submit your health and safety plan specific for the work you're doing, you're telling us the rules you're going to follow or not follow, or what rules, what rules are more restricted, and we're going to follow all those rules, because with Port Authority, the most strict rules are the ones that taken place. So what was the question again? Sorry.
So-
I had.
No, it's
I was going
okay.
somewhere.
It was asking if they do one on the client side, or someone with, say, for example, AECom Hunt, correct? Do they still have to do a safety orientation, whether it's with Holt or the GC that's on a specific project?
So yes, so the answer is yes, they do have to go through our safety orientation because we have to tell them our muster point and our rules for the site, and everybody might run it different. We all have safety people on site, so we'll have to make sure that we obey because Port Authority is always on site. They're always inspecting us daily, so we're gonna make sure that Port Authority, that we follow all the rules so everybody goes home safe.
Perfect. And it goes the same for majority of other GCs if they work with another
Yes,
GC.
everybody has their own orientation. You might go to a job that is run by
Whomever
you
may
said
be.
AECOM, right, AECOM, and then you do the orientation, but if we are under them and you're under us, you're gonna get another orientation by us.
Okay, perfect.
You
So,
mind if I?
yeah, you can
I'm
cut
sorry.
in. It's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little input on that. Every site is different as well. So what we would like to do during our safety orientations is at least brief whoever's going to be on site, the safety protocols we have, the mitigation processes that we have, and everything to keep everybody safe on the site. So just because you're with a certain client or you did an orientation with somebody else, doesn't mean that when you come on our site, everything is black and white. Everything varies. The sites are completely different from each different site, even if you are still working with the same client.
Perfect. And then we just got another question in. Do you require CPR, first aid, and AED? So, Sandy?
So Holt supers it depends on the client, what the client requires. And if it all falls from there. If the client requires for the subcontractors to have it, then we will inform this to the subcontractors. But basically most of our jobs, Holt is trained for that. Most of the supers, or all of the supers, not to say, they all have that type of training. So if we're working for a client, maybe we already had compliance on that, so we might not require it from the subcontractors.
So that's the last question that we have from our audience. So next week, we're going to be discussing project update. We're going to kind of go through the intake form on Westfield's website that you guys fill out when you do the registrations, as well as go over a brief timeline update of the project. So please join us next week, Thursday from 12 to 1. Go to the new JFK T8.com website and register. And if you have any questions regarding safety or any other questions outside of safety that you might have, please reach out to infot8@rfwconsultants.com. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sandy, and hope you guys all have a great day.